Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Natalie Goodis, and I'm on Riskified's product marketing team, and I'm excited to welcome you to our second webinar on the new web app. Today, we're going to cover the web app segmentation and reporting functionality, and we're going to show you how to gain meaningful insights from playing around with the data. While the first webinar was geared toward helping you with your day-to-day operational tasks, today's goal is to show merchants how they can use the new web app to understand fraud trends affecting their business. One of our objectives when developing this new web app was to provide transparency into Riskified's fraud review process and performance. So we're also going to go over how merchants can use this tool to monitor order review on a really granular level. I'd like to introduce you to today's presenters, Darren Mignault, an account manager in our New York office, and Alon Shemtov, product manager who sits with our team in headquarters in Tel Aviv. Once we start the webinar and once the presentation kicks off, feel free to submit questions as we go along in the questions section in the GoToWebinar control panel. That should be on the right side of your screen. I'll be keeping my eyes there and answering as we go. So with that, we're excited to kick it off, and we'll hand it off to our presenters.
Hi. So now my name is Alon. I'm with the Riskified product team. And I guess we'll just jump right into it. But first, I want to do a quick refresher, a quick reminder of what we covered in our previous webinar. Okay, so in our previous webinar, we briefly touched the scoreboard and the area chart, which are both gives you a big picture view of Riskified's performance and the most important KPIs according to this time frame. But the main subject of the previous webinar was our orders tab, which we covered in depth. The orders tab is mainly for operational actions, like looking for a specific order and performing order actions, specific order actions such as submitting a chargeback, or maybe understanding why Riskified declined a specific order using Riskified's decision insights. If you want to look back at that, all you need to do is go to the little small widget you have on the top right bottom, on the bottom right corner, and press, and you'll see there's a link there to Riskified's 101 webinar. So what are we going to see today? So today we're going to cover the dashboard tab. Okay, we're going to go in depth and in detail to Riskified's reporting capabilities. Okay, we created this dashboard and to provide our merchants as much as transparency as possible, and we want them to understand the fraud landscape and as we see it. If you ask yourself questions like how do Riskified deal with orders from a specific country or deal with orders from specific card value, now you have access to that data around the clock. So I guess we'll just start. So for day-to-day monitoring, for general monitoring, we have what we previously briefly touched, the scoreboard and the area chart. So the scoreboard and the area chart, as said, shows KPIs about order volume, approval rates, and chargeback rate according to any time filter or filters applied, which we'll see in a few seconds. So the area chart, not as the scoreboard, is where you can see KPIs and stats over time, right? So for instance, I can see here, if I scan over the area chart, I can see stats for specific dates. For instance, for August 22nd of 2017, for this specific merchant, this is the number of orders we approved, how much we declined, and canceled, chargeback, and approval rates, and approval rates. If you want to zoom into a specific time frame, that's not a problem. All you need to do is select and drag, and everything will adjust accordingly. Over to the right, we have what we call our trend lines. So if you want to zoom specifically on approval rate, you can see here only approval rate without all the other stats, and you can see here approval rate over the fluctuation of approval rate over the date filter set. Same goes for the chargeback rate. If I'll just adjust the time filter, so we'll have a few chargebacks. You can see here the chargeback rate over time. The same goes here, as I showed in the area chart. You can select and drag and see a specific area. Okay, as we can see here, just a small example, a little bump in chargeback rate. Merchants will, want to understand what happened here. They can select it, and start exploring and start to understand what happened here. Another thing we can do in the area chart, okay, is exclude certain statuses. So for instance, if you want to see specifically how the decline amount fluctuated over, let's say, for example, from February 1st until today, all you need to do is exclude the approvals, cancel the chargeback, and you'll be able to see the declines over time. Moreover, what you can do is go to change the chart view and look at the declines by their types. So if you want to see, for instance, not only declines at total by their type, declines at total, you can look at them by types. So for instance, if you're interested in seeing only fraudulent declines, so it may be interesting to explore what happened here. Why was there an uplift in fraudulent declines? Same goes for high risk and considerable risk declines. I guess this is the time for the first polling question of the day. Darren, are you excited for it?
I'm excited.
Let's see it. Okay. Okay. Give you a few seconds for the results to come in. Okay. While the results are coming in, I'll start talking about segmentation. Okay, so this naturally leads me to the next part of the dashboard. We saw all these KPIs and stats for the general population of the merchant. But what happens if the merchant wants to see these stats for a specific segment? For instance, if you want to see all these stats for just orders coming in from the UK, all he needs to do is apply the filter as I just did. You can see the filter applied over here, and all these stats are now only for the United Kingdom. We have the option of obviously adding more than one filter. We can have multiple filters. I'll add another filter, and now I have two filters. It's worth mentioning, and it's very interesting to see that the scoreboard will show you a comparison between the general population stats and the stats of only this specific segment I applied. Just for example, for this specific segment, the approval rates were a little bit better than the general population approval rate. The next part, sorry. As you segment your orders and your data, the next natural step will be to understand exactly the data the data of the specific orders in this specific segment. So what you can do is click here, View Orders, and then I can see the orders themselves. This will help you understand the data and the numbers behind the aggregated data. This will mainly come into hand when you want to understand fluctuations in approval rate. So all you need to do once you get to the Orders tab, you can segment it by decline types, and then you can use Riskified's Decision Insights, as we discussed in our previous webinar, to understand exactly the decline types that came within this segment, and it will help you understand the fluctuations of approval rates. But I guess the best way to showcase the web app full scope and functionalities will be using some specific example and use cases. So we have 3 examples for you today, and Darren, we'll start with the first one. Darren, do you want to take it from here?
Sounds good. Let me just take it over here. All right. Okay, so the first use case that we have, this is a demo account that is based on real merchant data from one of our luxury fashion clients. And in this example, we are going to say that we're logging in on July 17th. And we can see that yesterday, just by looking over here at the trend line, yesterday's approval rate was much lower than average, 96.4%. Usually, you can see the trend line here. The average is around 98. So our merchant wanted to understand Riskified's performance for yesterday. Was this relating to maybe a new product, which Riskified wasn't able to deal with accurately? Maybe was there a high rate of fraud attacks yesterday? Or maybe Riskified's performance was just a little subpar. So we're going to look into this. And in order to understand where the declines were, first we can hover over the area chart legend and see that, actually, let me just look at yesterday. So I'm going to say yesterday was July 16th. All right, now hovering over the declines, I can see that there were 17 declines yesterday. So if I go down to the table breakdown, I want to get an understanding of maybe was there a pattern here that can explain this. First, let's look at geography. So I can see we're looking at billing country right now, and I'm going to sort the table by approval rate with an ascending rate. And I can see that in Austria, we had a pretty low approval rate. Let me add this filter. And I can see that was only one decline. So that's probably not, that doesn't explain the dip in approval rate. The next lowest is France, 94.38%. Let me add this as a filter. So, okay, so this is 10 declines. 10 out of 17 is definitely significant for the day. Something that I'm going to want to look into. So let's see if I can drill down a little further into these orders. Another thing that I can look at is technology. I can look at browser, user device. This is interesting. Safari by far has the most orders, 88 orders, and still lower than average approval rate. So let me add this filter as well. And I can see, okay, so there are 4 declines that meet these criteria. And it looks like all 4 kind of happen around the same time. So let me see if I can dig into these a little bit more. I'm going to just hover over the declined area and add, instead of adding a filter, I'm going to view the orders right from here. So at first glance, apart from the timing, it looks like none of these are really connected. The email addresses have similar syntax, but the names are not close at all. But as I'm going through, I'm seeing something interesting here. First of all, the map with billing and shipping address and the IP location, it looks like they're all situated in exactly the same area. And I'm actually seeing that the radar chart over here, it has the same shape, meaning that the risk indicators on all 4 of these orders are weighted the same and have the same, they're in the same areas of risk as these orders went through our models. So these 4 models are clearly connected, excuse me, not the models, these 4 orders are clearly connected. And we can say that after this review, just digging in a little bit deeper, that these 4 orders were placed by one fraudster. The fraudster changed names, of course, and obviously changed credit cards throughout the 4 orders. But at least we know now that you can go back and report that the drop in approval rate yesterday was due to an anomaly. We had 4 fraud attempts by the same person. So this is the sort of pattern recognition that our analysts and our models examine on a daily basis to uncover fraud. And as Natalie mentioned, part of the goal of our new web app is to provide transparency into our decisions and to enable you to understand the background that leads to those types of fluctuations in our performance. So just a little bit of digging and you already have an explanation there. So I am now going to turn to a polling question, the second one, and let us know what you think. During high volume shopping days like Black Friday or other big launches, how do your approval rates change? Two-thirds of the way there. Anyone else? All right, I'm gonna close the poll. Interesting, I'm gonna share these results quickly. So more than half of you said that your approval rate on big launches or with higher volume is much higher than usual. That's typically what we see as well. And then the rest, no idea or much lower. So it's across the board. Interesting. So let's go to another use case. I'm going to shift this back on over to Alon. Alon, take it away.
Just a second. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Darren. And that question leads us to our second use case. So this is another demo account, okay, that is based on data of one of our merchants that is in a relatively high-risk vertical. Okay, this merchant is now getting prepared for holiday season 2017. Obviously, this is the time of the year, you know, it's the money time, stakes are very high, everybody's very excited, and they want to be best prepared for the holiday season, for this year's holiday season. In order to do so, this merchant was interested in understanding Riskified's performance for holiday season 2016. But before we're going to go to those specific stats, some context. So throughout the year, you can see the dev filter is adjusted to August of 2016 until today. So throughout this, over a little bit more than a year, we had 75% approval rate, 75% approval rate, and 0.22 chargeback rate. Again, merchant in a high-risk vertical, untypical numbers for Riskified. So what I'll do now is he can go to November 25th, which was Black Friday of last year, of 2016. And immediately he'll see, as we asked in the polling question, approval rates were much higher and chargeback rate was much better. Okay? At the moment, the merchant is pleased. Another anecdote, interesting thing, if you can see here how the pattern of orders throughout the day. So, you know, declined orders, the amount of declined orders stayed pretty much the same throughout the day, but the largest proportion of approved orders came starting in the afternoon. Just an interesting anecdote to consider. Next, we'll go to see stats from Cyber Monday, which was 28th of November of 2016. And now we can see again, better approval rates than throughout the year. Remember it was 75, and better chargeback rates. Not by much, but still better chargeback rate. So again, the merchant can be relatively pleased. But now we can ask themselves, okay, so Riskified performed better for me in the holiday season. They did better than throughout the year for both Black Friday and Cyber Monday, but still, why was Cyber Monday, okay guys, a little less good than Black Friday? One reasonable explanation for that can be, one way to look at it can be, if I'll put both of them in comparison one next to another. So here is Black Friday, and here is Cyber Monday. We can see them both together. If we look at the decline types, which can maybe explain the difference in approval rate, we can see pretty easily that fraudulent declines there were more fraudulent declines in Cyber Monday, and even more in high-risk declines. So a significant number of high-risk declines in comparison to Black Friday. And that goes a long way in explaining why on Cyber Monday approval rates were lower and chargeback rates were higher. Now we're ready to go into our third use case, which is a little bit more of an exploration case. The first two use cases were more like looking for something specific. The third use case will be just exploring the data to trying to find something interesting. Darren, back to you.
All right, thanks, Alon. Okay, so we are now in another demo account of ours. This is a third online merchant. So let's suppose that they just hired a new fraud manager. Eventually, she'll be coming into the web app to monitor Riskified's performance on a daily basis. But for now, it's just important for her to get a general feel of the fraud landscape for the merchant and to kind of see if there's anything interesting to know. So right now, she's just using it to explore general exploration. So I opened up the stats all the way to the beginning of this merchant's time with us. You can see starting from 0 here on the left. We have the all-time look at Riskified's performance. So overall, the story is very good. 98.4% approval rate, 0.1% chargeback rate. It's good performance. So I'm going to get just a bit more of an in-depth view of the KPIs by looking down at the table breakdown below. And one thing that I'm sure would jump out to her is that the vast majority of merchants' orders are from a United States billing address. So the billing country in the US, 72,000. The next closest is 217. So this is mainly a US domestic merchant. And we can see the approval rate here, 98.58%, but the chargeback rate, 0.07%. So it's actually lower than the overall chargeback rate. Maybe there's something to explore there. So I'm going to sort billing country by chargeback rate. Let's see what we can find. Okay, so first thing that jumps out, a double-digit chargeback rate, 36.84%. That's pretty high, right, Alon?
That's out of this world.
It's a little scary, very scary. So, I mean, there have only been 67 orders with the billing country of Taiwan, but they account for, let's see, if I add this filter here, they account for 0.09% of all orders, but almost 37% of all chargebacks. That's crazy. So I want to get to the bottom of these orders and looking at some other breakdowns. Let's see shipping country. So all of them are from the US, right there, part of a pattern, it sounds like. IP country, okay, so the majority, and the only ones with the chargebacks, with an IP country of Taiwan. And then bin country, again, the only ones with the chargeback rate from Taiwan. So this right here, I kind of already have a pattern. Billing country, IP country, and bin, Taiwan, shipping to the US. So on the area chart, it's been apparent the whole time, but you can clearly see that this merchant was the victim of a fraud ring. You have a spike in orders that meet these criteria, and many of them declined, but also, unfortunately, a good number of chargebacks, 20 right there. So just to quickly explain the difference between what Riskified differentiates between fraud MOs and fraud rings. Fraud MOs, there's certain types of fraud that we see in pretty steady rates all the time. We can identify them, we know of them. Fraud rings, they're anomalies, like this one. They come, they're an acute attack, and this one clearly looks like a bunch of fraudsters in Taiwan. They got their hands on some stolen credit cards. We assume this because of the IP address that they're in Taiwan. And then maybe they're using a US reshipper to have the goods forwarded to them. So that's the story we can tell. But over the time frame that this fraud ring occurred, we can see that let's go here. Just over this time frame, the fraud ring accounted for 1.5% of the total orders for this merchant, and nearly 45% of the chargebacks at the time. So this approval rate, 54.39%, compared to their overall, what it shows is that Riskified was it did well at identifying these as fraud. We declined a good number of them for fraud, but clearly we didn't decline enough. So we are going to zoom back out. Let's see if there's anything else interesting to know. So we can see here that before fraud attack, actually just a couple months before, there was a good order, didn't come back as a chargeback. Another order a few months later, we declined, and it looks like that was a good decline as well, but I'm going to go back out because I saw this outlier over here. So in June of 2017, we had another order with billing, shipping, or excuse me, billing, IP, and bin country of Taiwan and shipping country US. That was approved, and at this point, the chargebacks are pretty much matured, so we can assume that this was a good order and a good approval. So that's something else to note. Just because there's a fraud attack and they have certain criteria that we can identify as extremely risky, that doesn't mean that fraud that happened once will look the same in the future. This is a good order. Our models understand that. And this could easily be, there's a story to tell. Maybe this is a Taiwanese student who goes to school in the US. Maybe they're home on summer, this was in June. They're home on summer break using a parent's credit card or their own and shipping back to their dorm room in the US. Maybe that's a story. Doesn't really matter, it's a good order. That's revenue for the merchant. So just to give a brief overview of what we covered, you can use the web app's segmentation and reporting functionality to do a general exploration, see if there are any insights that you can find on your own, anything that you can bring back and maybe tell a cool story. The other thing that you're able to do is to dive in deep when you see some anomalies or you see subpar performance or you want to explain something as unexpected. All you have to do is dig into the numbers, see if there are any outliers that might account for the shift one way or another. And you can, at any time, and we covered this in the first one, export those orders by using the export function up here. And you can use those orders to tell whatever story you're looking to tell internally. There's a lot more that you can do. These are not the only use cases, and we encourage you to play around. There's a lot more features coming up, and that really is the end of our use cases today. I think we have some time for Q&A. So Natalie, let me, do you have any questions for us?
We do. We thought that it might be helpful to tackle a couple of frequently asked questions that have come up in previous conversations with merchants. So I'll go ahead and read out the questions, and our two presenters will ask. And again, for our attendees, if you do have any additional questions, do feel free to submit them in the chat feature in the GoToWebinar control panel. So to our first question, when I see a chargeback in the area chart, does that mean the order was placed on that date or that it was the chargeback filed on that date?
All right, that's a good question. So chargebacks that you see in the area chart, they are dated according to the order date, the date that the order was placed. The date that the chargeback was submitted to us, or the date that you received the notice of a chargeback, that's less relevant for our kind of reporting. It's more an insight about how long it took the legitimate cardholder to notice the fraudulent transaction or to call the bank and report a fraud. If you're looking for insights about, say, Black Friday, and you want to see how many orders placed on Black Friday eventually came back as chargebacks, that's why we really date back to the order date, so that you can have that insight.
All right, thanks, Darren. We'll start with head into the second question. Is there an easy way to see the KPIs for my international orders only?
Yeah, so I'll show you as well. So for international orders, let's say you are looking at billing country, and we said that we are the US country. So let's say you're looking at any order that is not a billing country US. Instead of adding a filter, we also have the option to exclude as a filter. So I will exclude the US, and what then I'm able to see in the area chart and below and up top in the scorecard are the KPIs for all billing countries except US. This is also helpful if you have an anomaly in one segment, say Taiwan with a 40% chargeback rate. If you want to take that out and see what your KPIs look like without the anomaly or the outlier, use this feature as well.
All right, thanks, Darren. To our third question, are there plans to add more segmentation capabilities? I'm very interested in seeing my chargeback rate according to credit card and issuing bank.
So the answer is definitely yes. We're working on adding additional segmentation capabilities, issuing bank and what was the other one? Issuing bank
and credit card.
And credit card is definitely both, two of them. In addition, we're also looking into adding segmentation by email domain, which we believe will be very interesting, and we would hope to roll them out until the end of the year.
All right, thanks, Alon. Fourth question. When I look at orders or stats in the web app according to time of day, what time zone is being used?
So the answer is pretty simple. It's just according to the time set in your browser. So if your browser is set to Eastern time, and you're seeing an order coming in at 9 a.m., so that means the order came at 9 a.m. Eastern time.
All right, and now to our fifth and final question. Are technical and business declines counted in the scoreboard's approval rate? What about orders under review?
The answer to that, no. Technical and business declines, they're not counted in the scoreboard. You'll see those down here in orders excluded from the dashboard. Reason being, we didn't review these orders and we didn't give a decision of approve or decline one way or another. Orders under review, they can be seen in real time by going up here to this icon that looks like a clock, and you can see orders under review. If there are any, you can click the link here, and you'll see the orders that are currently under review, and you can also action them from there.
All right, so thanks, Darren. I think that about wraps it up for today's webinar. And again, on behalf of Darren, Alon, and myself, and the rest of the Riskify team, we're really happy that you joined us today, and we hope that you found the presentation useful and insightful. And as always, we really love hearing feedback on our webinars and our product in general. So I encourage you to reach out to Alon. You'll be able to see his email address on the final slide. Should you have any follow-up questions or just generally to share thoughts on the presentation and the insights we showed you today. So again, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to join us, and we look forward to perhaps seeing you in future webinars. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.